Well, they don't look like me. They don't talk like me. They don't look like me. They don't talk like me. They don't look like me.
Welcome back to Comic Shop Part 2 of Episode 5, where we're going to be talking about social statements in comics.
Definitely, we have a lot of fun on the show, but sometimes it's fun to dig into some topics that are maybe a little more on the serious side. We'll still have fun with it, of course, but comic books as a medium, I've been able to make some great statements over the years about society and what have you, and I think it's appropriate to talk about.
You know,
that.
it's a lot of great metaphors come from comics.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of good parable superheroes come out of comics to basically bring up great social subjects.
It's not all just, guy flying around in a cape punching the bad dude. There's substance there. It's good stuff.
There's voice.
So, I think, starting off, we got about 3 solid examples we want to get to. I think the first one we're going to talk about, though, is one that I think is very powerful, and I lent you the book as well to read. Probably not as well known for some of our readers. It's from the 50s, actually, and it's a great comic about a soldier coming home from the Korean War. And essentially it's about this guy named Joey. He comes back from the war, gets off the train, and is welcomed by his parents and a few townspeople, and they're like, oh, very excited to see him. He's a war hero.
The whole town comes out to greet him.
Not yet, but they have the parents mentioned that there is a town hall meeting planned for him later, where the whole town is going to gather to celebrate Joey's return, which is great. And you can tell right away that Joey's missing one of his arms from the war. And he mentions that it was his platoon leader, Hank, who actually saved Joey's life. He pushed him out of the way, and Joey only ends up losing an arm, and Hank loses his life.
By jumping on a grenade. So anyways, back at the home, Joey is saying to his parents, oh, before the town hall meeting, before this big hoopla about me, I need to go out and see Hank's grave, because you guys took care of that, right? And the parents are like, well, we weren't able to take care of Hank's body and bury it with the other war heroes in town. And Hank and Joey's like, why?
Is very upset. Is very upset with his parents, and his parents say, well, you never mentioned it about him. They don't really specify what it is. And the parents also say, well, geez, we imagined him differently when you talked about him. And then when we saw him, we were taken back, and the Undertaker called us, and this big issue came up, and the town was up in arms about it. Well, Hank is an African American, and that is why the issue came up. And his parents had to bury him outside of town. Well, up to this point, we don't know that as the reader. And then Hank goes to the town hall meeting, and he gives a very powerful statement to everyone there in town. I'm going to read it directly for you. It's but when his body was sent back here, it wasn't good enough to be buried here. It wasn't good enough because its skin wasn't the right color. Well, the grenade that tore that skin to pieces didn't know its color. Didn't care if it was white or black. What did he die for? What did I give my arm for? You say you're proud of me. Well, I'm not proud of you. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of you, and I'm ashamed for you. And the lights kind of darken, and everyone starts to walk out of the door, shaking their heads, and Joey is sitting there on the stage by himself. The comic is only like 10 pages long. It is extremely powerful. I wish it was more widely available, but
It's not. You have to basically go out and get it in trade paperback.
Yeah, it's from Shock Suspense Stories number 11, came out November 1953 from Entertaining Comics. Great piece. And you read it. What was your initial thoughts as you were reading it?
I thought it would be something along that lines when I got to the end, but I read a lot of comics, so the fact that I would, guess that is, probably normal. But I had originally thought, like, maybe it turned out that the fallen soldier and the main character were actually gay lovers, perhaps.
Definitely. That would have been a nice wrinkle. Yeah. Or
it turned out that the fallen soldier was actually a woman, or something about that line. But he turned out to be a black guy.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's just it's a powerful thing. Like that's definitely not my generation.
Yeah,
and
it's
not
much more powerful for people of like our parents' generation who
Yeah.
were a little bit more alive when some of that stuff was being dealt with.
But I was still very, very, very touched by it because the lines, the grenade didn't care about the skin color. We were on the same team fighting for the same cause abroad, but then we come back home and we're treated differently. That ain't gonna fly.
That's not right.
That's not right at all.
Yeah.
And it's a great, great piece. If for any of you out there who know me, feel free to borrow that book anytime. Great story. So that was kind of the first one. A little more on the serious side, but let's do one that's a little more fun. Let's talk about the X-Men. Easiest in the book to talk about Marvel superheroes.
You know what? The X-Men are more or less a metaphor and can be, seen as a metaphor for homosexuality.
Discrimination and prejudices.
It's people basically born differently. They're viewed, as normal when they're born, and then by the time they hit, puberty, they change, and then to something that society doesn't seem as a norm.
Well, quick interjection. I don't know. Maybe I haven't read the X-Men as thoroughly, but I mean, I'm sure I definitely see the homosexual angle there too as a metaphor. But I thought it was not just that. Specifically, I mean, it's racism, it's prejudice, it's discrimination, it's fear of people that are different. It's not just solely that, is it?
Well.
I mean, that's
definitely not. But
it's one of the easier ones. I think all of them.
It's probably the easiest metaphor that you can relate the X-Men to. I mean, if you've ever seen, say, the third one, there's a scene where you have Pyro, Iceman, Rogue, and Wolverine all in Bobby's parents' house, and they're all kind of talking and or is it this?
It is the second one. Yeah, I just watched it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Well, anyway. They're sitting down on the couch and they have this back and forth dialogue and Bobby's parents finally find out that he has the ability to freeze things with just a touch or turn to ice, and the mother just looks at her son and goes, "Have you tried not being a mutant?"
It does kind of mimic that classic image in your head of a youngster coming out to the parents.
To his parents.
Have you tried?
In
the way she said, have you tried not being a mutant?
Or,
kind of one of those things.
The metaphor, have you tried not being gay?
Yeah, just a lot of misunderstanding and judgment there. But yeah, a fear of people that are different. I mean, you could do it almost between like white people and how a lot of white people fear some other cultures. Islam or
how do you
Mexicans.
feel? How do you feel about that that topic as a person? Like
which one in particular?
Are gays?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
I don't. I think it's I think that's also a generational thing. I don't see what the big deal is. But I mean that's just me. So
I was having a conversation with my buddy Oliver last night as we were walking to. My buddy Oliver and I are straight, good-looking guys. And we walked over to this bar in Everett called Twisted, which is a gay nightclub. Mm-hmm. And him and I were having that whole, big debate whether or not, gays should get married. And I kind of turned to him and I was like, I'm not gay and I'm not married, so I shouldn't have an opinion.
Yeah, I think it'll get better as older generations die out. It'll get better. It'll get better, like Dan Savage says. But the X-Men, yeah, there are so many great storytelling there, and of course with Magneto and his almost like we talked about earlier, his militant view of it's us versus them, and he's very proud to be a mutant, and he despises the humans.
Let's create mass genocide.
Essentially,
for this specific group of people.
So yeah, X-Men is another great example. That was kind of our second one. Got a third one here, Spider-Man number 96 through 98. There's a great story arc there where Harry Osborn does LSD and almost dies from too much. Essentially, the U.S. Department of Health contacted Stan Lee and Marvel and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do a great story about why kids should stay away from drugs." So Stan Lee doesn't just do it very straightforward. He does it in kind of his own way. It's not just a, hey, drugs are bad kind of thing. He just tells a great story that shows the dangers of consuming too much and not knowing what you're doing, and just in general, like, hey, if you choose to do this, this is what can happen. Well, the Comic Code of Authority, kind of people that kind of governed the content that came out and was released, was like, no, we're not going to put our seal of approval on that. You can't release this. No.
It should be like freedom of expression. That's basically what comics come down to.
Yeah, and well, even though the comic did end up taking an anti-drug stance, the Comic Code didn't like it. Well, Stan Lee and the guys at Marvel essentially gave them a metaphorical, middle finger. They published it without the seal. Was a huge hit. Sold really well. Was considered a great turning point in comic books. And eventually, the Comic Code of Authority ended up kind of loosening some of their requirements and rules and regulations and stuff like that. So that's a powerful moment. It makes Spider-Man and Stan Lee using that platform to make some statements.
I think these are all really good examples of the fact that comic books aren't just for kids, but it's really a medium for all ages.
It can be both. Sometimes you're gonna have stories that are more, maybe more kid oriented, more just fun. Oh, you're the bad guy. I'm gonna punch you, and save the good people. And then sometimes you can do it. It doesn't have to be either or, and that's great. And some stories are gonna be a little more darker, like if you're reading Spider-Man or Punisher. I mean,
good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, another one, The Punisher, another great example. He's a former non-vet. So, in what's his worldview? He sees it as these people can't live.
Black and white.
He's very black and white. He's like, these people have violated the law. Our society is giving them. There's too much leniency. I'm going to take matters into my own hands too. And he's treated not well for being a non-vet. Unlike Captain America, who's World War II and beloved by everyone.
I think, believe it or not, he's kind of the same character, just in a different generation.
Yeah. I mean, Frank Castle, Steve Rogers, both, of course, yeah. Frank Castle ends up taking it a step further with his Nom roots and his very black and white. He's okay with killing. That's for sure.
Well, anyway, let's move on to our hero and villain of the week. Every week we select a hero and a villain. This week, Pat will be selecting our
villain.
And I will be doing the hero. But, Pat, who's your villain? Who's your selection?
My villain of the week is the Shoreline Nissan dealership. I'm guessing we will not be sponsored by them anytime soon. I had some problems with my car a couple weeks ago, and I brought in my car there to have it looked at. Normally, I wouldn't go to an actual dealership, but one of my issues was the light on my dashboard, which I mentioned a couple weeks ago. And for something like that, apparently, to get the initial reading on the problem and see the part, you got to go to a dealership because it's all computer-based within the car. Anyways, they looked around and they found some other stuff. They wanted to do $2,000 worth of work on my car. And I was like, I'm going to get a second opinion. I'm going to go to Edmunds Automotive. I know those guys well. They've done great work on my car. They're not going to screw me over. Yeah, I'm only going to need like $460 worth of work there, and I'm not, because some of the stuff that Nissan wanted me to do, I didn't even necessarily need right now on my car. So
it's kind of
screw
insane.
You, Nissan, and Shoreline. Edmunds Automotive for life.
That's insane. Yeah.
Who's your hero?
I guess it always pays to get a second opinion.
Definitely.
My hero is actually Deadpool of Wenatchee.
Great story. We'll post it on the Facebook.
There is a man dressing up as Deadpool in Wenatchee, Washington, going out and serving and protecting, which I think is awesome to have real-life superheroes.
Oh, yeah. That's just fun. There's going to be a Deadpool movie, too, in the works. It's going to be the Zombieland guys are writing it, and he's going to break the fourth wall.
Oh, I can't
how
hear
awesome
that.
is
Oh,
that?
that is so cool.
Deadpool is freaking amazing.
Well, anyway, we're wrapping up.
Dude, it's that time again as always. I'm sad. I don't want to turn off the light and close down the shop.
But we got to. It's the end of the episode. Anyway, again, I'm Eugene Capon.
I'm Pat. Thanks for listening. Always appreciate it. You know the drill. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. What's up?
Inside the system.
Your top habits.
Inside the system. The connection.